From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Today, we examine the job market as COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce calls the worker shortage the most critical and widespread challenge facing businesses. But consider this. On the national level, the economy added 559,000 jobs in May, which doubled April's total, and the unemployment rate fell to 5.8%. President Biden says the numbers show the economy is bouncing back, but some economists say there is a disconnect between those hiring and the folks who are unemployed, searching for better jobs, or people who don't feel comfortable returning to work just yet. The president admits there will be setbacks in this recovery. The U.S. Chamber conducted a poll, and here are some of the key findings. Nearly half of Americans who became unemployed during this pandemic say they are not actively looking for work. 6 in 10 people said they are in no hurry to return to work, and 3 in 10 said they don't expect to return to work this year. 13% said they never plan to return to work. Many businesses say they are struggling, trying to find workers, and some are even going to great lengths to fill jobs. It's hard to miss these signs of the time all over Greater Cincinnati.
Everyone is just about in the same boat. I think everyone is struggling, trying to find help. It's a difficult time.
It's the worst that we've ever seen.
Layla and Shaker Daywood are part of a family-owned business that Layla's dad started with one restaurant in 1986 and has now grown to 12, including Butterbee's American Grill in Claremont County. Although unemployment has now reached its lowest mark nationally since the pandemic began, the Daywoods said they've had to get creative attracting workers.
We are currently giving a $500 sign-on bonus for any position at the Butterbee's restaurant.
We want it to last for a while. If this is what's going to catch the public's eye to bring them in, then we will continue to do this to bring on valuable talent, team players.
Other businesses are also trying to get workers through incentives. You could hit the jackpot at Hard Rock Casino with a sign-on bonus of up to $4,000. With restrictions easing, business is picking up everywhere. And the one common denominator is
we're able to staff the restaurant enough for the business that comes in, but we're in growth mode, and we are wanting to have an advantage on our competitors and other restaurants.
Now, dozens of states have now pulled the plug on the extra weekly federal unemployment help, including Ohio. Recently, I talked one-on-one with Governor Mike DeWine about this issue.
Yeah, our unemployment is now down to what it was prior to the pandemic.
That is the good news, according to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, but he says businesses still need help.
When you travel across Ohio and you talk to somebody that owns a bar or owns a restaurant or many times a manufacturing company, they got signs up. They can't open up sometimes for lunch because they can't find the people.
Reason enough, DeWine told me, for him to decide Ohio should opt out of the federal unemployment $300 weekly benefit.
We just felt it was time to get back to the normal unemployment. We're still paying the normal unemployment. We have many opportunities for people to upskill their talents. If they don't like the job that they had before and they see an opportunity, we've got opportunities for them to get the training.
Indiana has also decided to opt out of the weekly bonus. Critics of the enhanced unemployment say the extra money in many ways has provided an incentive for people to not return to work.
How much of that is caused by the extra $300? I don't think we know. Some of it we think is. There's other factors that are playing out. You can't go through an upheaval like we've gone through and not have some strange things occurring.
Well, up next, a conversation with the president of the African American Chamber of Commerce, the economic impact the past year has had on his members, when Let's Talk Cincy continues. One organization that has tried to help navigate small businesses through the COVID-19 storm the past year is the African American Chamber of Commerce. I talked with former Ohio State Senator and now Chamber President Eric Kearney about getting businesses and workers back on track.
It's like the tale of two cities, right? It's like Dickens' classic. So some people are experiencing some exceptional growth, and we're very, very happy to hear about that. We have 30% of our members who've gone out of business, and so there's a process of how do you turn this around? How do you start a new business? Do you go work for someone else? What does one do? And so that's kind of what we're seeing, a dichotomy.
30%?
Yes.
That's tough.
Yeah. It's really tough. It's really very, very hard. Nationally, it was 40%, but here we can say 30%.
When you hear about the statistic that there were all these jobs available in March of this year is one example, yet we keep hearing that people aren't applying for the jobs, not going back to work. Are you getting a sense of that from your businesses?
No, what the businesses that I personally have spoken with have been looking for employees, but I would encourage all of those people who are maybe sitting on the sidelines and thinking about, oh, how do I find a job? I would encourage them to start their own business. Entrepreneurship is the way to create wealth in America. It is the fastest path to the American dream. We would love to help people start their own business. So I would just say, if you have an idea, if you have a passion, if you have a skill, exercise it and go into business for yourself. So if there are people out there that are looking for work, that is what I would tell them to do. The small businesses that may be looking for employees, I would say that keep pounding on that door, keep doing those postings, and keep searching, because there are people out there, particularly I think in greater Cincinnati, who would be willing to work. I think there's also a challenge because some people are saying work looks different now. And that is, you know, can I work from my home? Do I physically need to be in an office? You know, that's something business owners have to decide.
So businesses have to be very flexible, probably more so than they even want to be.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think so. I think there's a natural desire to have people come back, you know, because of the bonding that occurs, the socialization, the exchange of knowledge, right? I mean, I imagine in your business, there's a lot of information exchanged as you're walking to the coffee station or walking to the water cooler or even leaving for work, right? You exchange information or ideas. And that's what I think a lot of employers want to get back to, but I think a lot of employees, and maybe efficiency may even dictate this, want to say, hey, maybe there's a hybrid. We can stay at home for part of the time and we can work remotely or come into the office.
Did you buy into the notion that the unemployment, expanded unemployment impacted the fact that a lot of people weren't coming back to the workplace? No,
I think it's more complex than that. So for instance, a lot of low-wage earners, wage workers, want to work close to their home because of transportation. They may not own a car. There may not be reliable bus service. They don't want to rely upon Uber or Lyft. So I think that's part of it. Another big part of it is childcare. I mean, think about if you're a family, both parents were working and kids were in school, like was pre-COVID-19 pandemic, and then suddenly kids can't go into school, one of the parents has to sacrifice. In a lot of cases, I know that has been women. And so I think that adds to it. Also, I think people were cautious about, well, what is my employer going to ask me to do in terms of interacting with people and COVID and things like that. And I think that there was a certain uncertainty about the economy. So if I go in and get a job, will it be there, 2 months or 3 months from now? I think that economy is kind of leveled out. People can have more confidence. I think people will come back into work shortly.
Well, up next, the local company offering you a cash incentive to get behind the wheel when Let's Talk Cincy continues. Another big local company is searching for more workers and offering extra cash to get them. Metro is looking for at least 24 new drivers, and the incentive might make you eager to get behind the wheel.
Great time, great place to be. And of course, you know, people have concerns, COVID-19. Nevertheless, we move forward.
Metro is the latest company to offer incentives to bring people on board its workforce. The company is hiring bus drivers with a cash incentive.
$1,000 that's offered to your operators once they complete their trial trip, which is the end of training and a probationary period. They receive a $1,000 bonus.
All the help wanted signs around town, the clear indication of the need. Many businesses say finding workers has never been this difficult. For Metro, this comes at a time when the company is also reinventing itself. The new drivers will support increased service on 10 routes, including 7 routes running 24 hours for the first time in 50 years.
That was tied into the levy passing with reinventing Metro. That was one of the campaigns that was the push because, of course, the need was there. Of course, COVID changed some things, but as people trickle back into the workforce, that need is there again. So yes, that was part of it, reinventing Metro.
Dukes, who started as a bus driver 27 years ago, says the $1,000 is an attention grabber.
They're coming back, but it's not as quickly as we would like to see it happen.
More now of my one-on-one interview with former state senator Eric Kearney about the pros and cons of those incentives aimed at attracting workers.
You mentioned the bonuses, and that puts a stress on small businesses. So if you're competing for talent and you're a small company, maybe you're 5 or 10 employees and you're growing and you're trying to compete for workers against the casino that's paying bonuses, there's no competition there, right? So that puts a greater strain on small businesses. And so small businesses have to think creatively, come up with some way to fill that gap and find and retain workers. So those bonuses, while they sound great, you know, on a macro level, for an average small business owner, that's really tough.
It's interesting that you leap to say start your own business. I would imagine, obviously, it's not as easy as that, and so a lot of people might be a little fearful of starting their own thing. But you immediately said, just go for it.
Yeah, because I think this is a wonderful time to start a business. There's a lot of change in the economy. I think that there are certain advantages that small businesses have through the use of technology. So for instance, if you, let's say you make socks or whatever it might be, you can sell those all across the globe on Shopify or Etsy or even Amazon, right? So there are great opportunities for people to start a business and to utilize technology. And I would say that if you're trying to replace household income, the quickest way to do that is to be an entrepreneur and to start a business for yourself. If you're interested in creating long-term wealth for you and your family, the best way is through being an entrepreneur. I mean, that's the American dream, and that's what ideally this country will fulfill.
And this past year probably reminded us about the need of having 2 forms of income. Not just relying on, one job. Now, that's not to say that you have to have 2 or 3 jobs. I'm not suggesting that. But having something else, like creating something for your own, on your own.
So here we call it a side hustle. So some people, they have a side hustle. You might have a 9 to 5, and then when you get home, you got your side hustle that you might do on Etsy or Shopify or however you sell your product or service, right? And so that side hustle can become a business. It can grow and you can develop it. But I think most Americans, if you're at a certain income range, you're working 2 jobs effectively.
Your background in politics, you probably have kept a close eye on the dollars and cents of the past year. Obviously, with all the stimulus money going out, people worry now how that's going to impact them personally, how that'll impact businesses, because at some point you have to pay for all of this. How is that going to impact businesses in the long run? Any thought given to that?
Yeah, so what I would personally like to see is for the U.S. Congress to pass the infrastructure bill. And I think that's important because we do need improvements to our roads, our water systems. I mean, look at the Brent Spence Bridge. I mean, oh my gosh, right? We need that. And then our grid, the electric grid that we're relying upon more and more because of the internet. So I think the infrastructure bill is very, very important, and that will have short-term and long-term benefits for our economy.
The president has redefined it, though.
Yes. Yeah, they've redefined it, and I think they're negotiating it. But at its core, I think it's something that we need, and I can't imagine that people aren't aware of it. I mean, if you look at some parts of our state, or even kind of this market area, some places do not have reliable internet. So think about that, right? I mean, we rely upon the internet so much, and some people have spotty internet just because of where they live. So we need that infrastructure. We absolutely, I would say 100% need it. It will help business. It will help our individual quality of life and things like that. With respect to the stimulus, I think the stimulus money is kind of, fading a little bit. People have paid down their credit cards. I think now there is a boom, a rush to get out. So travel will come back. I think hotels will come back, restaurants will come back, and all those other parts of the economy will boom. I think combined with the infrastructure bill, that our economy is going to do very, very well over the next 2 years, I would probably say.
My final question, after this year plus of the pandemic, we talked about these issues of disparity that existed before the pandemic, but no one listened.
Right.
Now we saw it happening in real time. As we get back to normal, do you think folks will still understand that the disparities will still exist for a while?
Now, I'm concerned about that, to be honest with you, Curtis. The disparities are alarming. They're stark. We're trying to fight against it every day by educating people and providing opportunities for people. So I think there's still a concern. We did a study, we commissioned a study by University of Cincinnati about the economic impact of black businesses in Cincinnati. And that study found that it's $1.44 billion. That's really a sexy number, right? People are saying, wow, that's great. But that's less than 1% of the economic impact of Greater Cincinnati. And if you take a national perspective, it's 2.2%. So Cincinnati, we're down, right? Our black-owned businesses are not as big as they should be. They're below the national average. And so that's why we need initiatives, like, for instance, Ascend initiative, which Mayor John Cranley is leading, and we're doing along with the Urban League and the Minority Business Accelerator. And we need other programs to help build up these businesses and address the disparity, the gap in terms of wealth and in terms of business activity. And that's beneficial for everyone. And here's why. It will, if we were to expand and grow the number of black businesses, that would help employment, which would reduce people's reliance upon certain public services. It would help our neighborhoods to grow. It would add to the vibrancy of this market because there would be different and new businesses. And you would see the tax base grow, which would ease the tax burden for everyone. So these measures to help decrease the gap, help everybody in the greater Cincinnati area, state of Ohio, and I would argue the country. And so that's why we need to embrace this type of change and move aggressively to address that wage gap and wealth gap.
Up next, working to save a Cincinnati music landmark when Let's Talk Cincy returns. I want to tell you about a major project to support Cincinnati's King Records. Several local artists, along with some of the biggest names in music, are donating songs in support of this legendary record company.
What started as one album grew across 2 years to 16 LPs and 12 CDs.
The project is called For the Love of King, an album and CD series that will raise money to benefit the restoration of the King Records building in Cincinnati. Bruce Weil is the project's creative consultant and producer, and John Rose is the assistant creative consultant for the Bootsy Collins Foundation. The response from artists all around the world to have their music be a part of this Love of King project has been overwhelming.
People like Kenny Barron and Pharoah Sanders and Joey DeFrancesco, who are living legends in the jazz world, you know, I was amazed to get them.
Another living legend who said yes to the project is former Beatle, Paul McCartney.
I know there's some connection between Paul McCartney and King, and the reason I knew that was that when he came to town a few years back, they asked him who, you know, everybody was asking for his time. Can you meet with so-and-so? Can you, he said, the only thing I want to do is visit King Records. The amount of truly great jazz artists and blues artists that are right here in Cincinnati is amazing. And so when you have in the same town, you know, Steve Schmidt, Art Gore, Mike Wade, Kathy Wade, you know, On a Limb, they're a young band, but the Eric Wurzelbacher Quartet, all these people that are, and then in blues, Dudley Taft, you know, just there's so much Cincinnati talent that is of a level that's just incredible. And so they're mixed in with the other groups, some of which are from as far away as Serbia, and certainly a lot from the UK.
We'll have more on this great music project in the upcoming weeks. King Records operated from the 1940s through the mid-1970s, and of course, two of the biggest names to record on this label, Bootsy Collins and James Brown. Well, thanks for joining us on this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. I'm Curtis Fuller. I'll see you next week.